3, 2, 1. Right here. 4 tires of fuel.
Ride 1.
Outside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 4 and Fuel podcast. We're back for episode 7. We've got a lot to talk about today. Had a great Homestead race, and at the end of the show, we get to talk about Talladega. And everybody here loves Talladega. No reason why we shouldn't. First, we're going to bring back Brandon Stringer. Brandon, you were not here last time. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, last week I was a little busy with the United States Navy, being fucked by a non-skid dildo. But other than that, it wasn't a fun week. It kind of sucked. But I'm glad to be back. Glad I don't see. Got my internet back to talk about NASCAR.
Of course, we always love talking about NASCAR. We always love when you're on the show because we get that extra perspective. And a Matt Kenseth fan, we don't see too many of those, so we get that diversity. Matt Kenseth fan.
Just not now, the way he's performing.
And bring back Kevin. Kevin, you're 7 for 7. You've been on the show every episode. How you feeling?
I feel good. Got back from Five Guys before the podcast, and man, I'm feeling good.
Well, now that we got Wes talking, Wes, you are also 7 for 7. What are you going to do to keep this streak going where you don't miss an episode?
Man, it's going to be tough. We're going to have to try to
quit work.
That might have to happen. No, I'm just kidding. We won't get to that point. But no, it's been fun doing all the podcasts so far and looking forward to seeing what else we have for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Jeff Gordon, he has the record for most consecutive starts in the Cup Series with 797 races. We're going to see if, maybe one of us can top that here at the 4 and Field podcast. One of us will hit 800 in a row without missing. Brandon back at 1. And I don't think he might not make it. I feel like he's a part-timer.
This will be my last podcast probably for the next 5 weeks because, I'm going to be gone for a minute.
Oh, and that is not what we want to hear at the 4 and
What's
Field
happening to
podcast. Maybe some funding issues for Brandon coming up. He can't afford to be on the podcast.
Hey, duty calls, man.
And one more guy that's also, 7 for 7. Steve, welcome back.
Our editor.
Yep.
Editor-in-chief.
I'm learning how to edit as we go, so it might be a little bit rough, but we'll learn as we go.
Assistant to the editorial manager.
Exactly.
Editorial manager.
Yep. But I love doing these. I'm super excited to be back on.
We get to relax, the last, month or so we've been doing like 2 episodes a week, maybe 3. Now we get to settle down, 1, and maybe the occasional 2 if we get anything special to talk about. But I think it will get more of a consistent role here at the 4 and Field podcast. This episode will probably be up on Thursday. So hopefully you all enjoy this one. I'm also 7 for 7. I'm hoping to keep my streak alive. And, before I forget, again, for the 6th time, just got to give a shout-out to our producer, Jordan Missig. Definitely, I know he would have asked me how I'm doing, so thank you, Jordan. I know you're asking how I was doing since none of these clowns asked today. So I'm doing great. I'm excited for this episode. And exciting is Richard Childress Racing. Wes, I'm going to go to you because you've been big on Tyler Reddick, and Austin Dillon. Where has RCR come from this season? They both finished inside the top 10 this week. Austin Dillon finished 8th. Tyler Reddick finished 4th. And they had a strong performance at Martinsville. If it wasn't for the beginning of the race for Austin Dillon, he would have been up towards the front. Do you think they could be contending for wins? And do you think maybe, RCR gets back in victory lane this year?
I think there's a really good chance for it. I noticed, especially a comparison from this year to last year, I feel like Richard Childress Racing was really good in the qualifying department, but they weren't able to execute in the actual finishes itself. But here we are in 2020, and it's a different dynamic for the team with Tyler Reddick being a new driver and a different asset, of course, a 2-time champion, and, of course, Austin Dillon having a championship in the Xfinity Series. I feel like they can relate really well. towards their prior experiences. And I feel like we've definitely seen a boost, especially in that finishing department. We heard Austin Dillon say that at Martinsville, he had the best car that he's ever had, and he went from pretty much dead last on the track from the very start of the race to staying 2 laps down and coming up to 24th before the fumes issue. He's had really good results, and we also saw Tyler Reddick have a race-winning potential car just at Homestead, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So I feel like it's been a pretty good step up for both of these two drivers. Of course, Tyler Reddick being new, but just as an overall department, I feel like they've definitely shown a lot more potential this year for finishes that are better, of course, in comparison to last year, where we saw both the drivers, Hemrick and, of course, Austin Dillon, both struggle. I think that there's definitely the potential for both of them to come out with maybe a win this year. I feel like we've never really seen Austin Dillon break through, but I feel like his consistency this year has definitely been a step in the right direction from prior years that we've seen, because he hasn't really been able to execute all that well, especially in the long run, unless he had made the chase, where he did pretty well in the beginning. This year seems to be definitely one that's a little bit stronger for him. And I think, especially for Reddick's case, I think that we're seeing, especially with that performance at Homestead, a potential breakout star. I think that there's a good chance that he has a way to be able to pull off a victory this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it soon, because they do show a lot of potential right now at the moment. And if they're able to keep that growing throughout the rest of the year, I think that we could definitely see them, maybe both, somehow pull off a victory. It would be a shock to see Austin Dillon get a victory that's, I wouldn't say like kind of gifted, because I feel like a lot of his two wins both kind of came off a little bit of luck, but they definitely worked to his advantage. Maybe not so much at Daytona, but he's definitely showing good speed this year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him up there contending, like we've seen him do at Michigan in times before, at Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a victory. But Reddick, he definitely looks really impressive for a rookie.
Definitely. Tyler Reddick looks really impressive, and Austin Dillon is flying under the radar. Definitely look for those two to compete for more top fives and top tens as the season goes on. Now I want to get into the rookies this season, as we saw Christopher Bell get a top 10, his career best finish, and Tyler Reddick also, as we mentioned, his career best finish in fourth. Kevin, which rookie do you think has the best chance to, get into victory lane first?
I wanted to start off with John Hunter Nemechek, but just with the team he's on with Front Row, I don't feel like the equipment can really, sustain him up there to get him the win. He has been doing exceptionally well with the equipment that he's been given, but I don't think that it's good enough to get him a win. Maybe at a plate track, we'll see this upcoming week. But Don, we were talking about this last night. I think it's gonna be Christopher Bell, because we were saying that I think when he goes back to tracks that we've raced before, he could potentially get a win. I think of everybody, of all the rookies we've seen so far this season, I feel like he has the best chance, especially being an affiliate with Joe Gibbs. I feel like they're gonna try to give him the best equipment that they can, and I think we might see the 95 car in the victory lane sometime soon. So.
Christopher Bell looking really good. Definitely was a bad start for him, but I think, like you said, I think as we get into these tracks for the second time later down the road, I think Christopher Bell's going to pick it up, and he's going to start running more consistently in the top 10. And the more you run in the top 10, the more chances you have at winning, and you could possibly see him slip into victory lane. Got some good tracks for him coming up this summer, and Christopher Bell's really good when the track is slick. Got that dirt track background. Christopher Bell could be a serious threat for victory lane. Now, Brandon, there is one rookie that has really struggled this season, has almost become irrelevant in the rookie battle, and that is Cole Custer. What do you think is up with Cole Custer?
Before the season even started, I didn't think Cole Custer was ready for the Cup Series yet. Not because he's not talented enough or anything like that, but it's because his age. He's only 22 years old, and as we've seen in the past, the drivers like Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson at times, before they hit around age 24, 25, they started to struggle a little bit, couldn't get off wins, were really inconsistent. But, man, I really thought Cole Custer would be a lot better than he was. I thought he'd be better running than what he is right now, because I thought he'd run around 15th, 16th and be, just there. But lately he's been behind the furniture road cars, JTG's running like 26. We saw at Martinsville, he even competed Bubba Wallace and Jimmy Johnson. He was 2-3 laps down, and he was running around 30th. But I just think he'll get it together, but the 41 team and Cole Custer, they really need to get it together because Dennis Suarez lost his ride, and I didn't think he deserved to lose that ride. He only had one season in that car. It wasn't even that bad. His average finish position last year was like around 16th. That's almost 10 positions higher than Cole Custer right now. I think he'll get better, but right now Cole Custer's been off the map right now.
Yeah, you'd almost think that Cole Custer was sitting in that 38 car in the underfunded equipment. Definitely not looking too good for Cole Custer. Can't feel too good if you're Daniel Suarez. You see you get yourself booted from a ride, especially having the sponsorship. He brought, Eris with him, and it just all fell through for him. And now the guy that replaces you is doing worse than you. Definitely not a good look for Short Haas Racing. Now, one thing that's got the fans going, definitely created some drama at the end of the race. Joey Logano and Chase Elliott back at it again. Logano was quoted today saying, "You cost me a win, I cost you a win." This obviously means it was payback for what happened at Bristol. But Steve, do you think this little feud between these two guys is over?
No, I don't think it's over. We'll see it go throughout the summer. I definitely think Logano felt like he was costed a win at Bristol, and frankly, I agree with him. Elliott just made a mistake at Bristol, but I think either way at Homestead, I think Hamlin had the better car, was going to get up to Elliott and pass him anyways, whether Logano was there or not. But we'll see. We'll see these two keep going at it, and we'll get down to the end of a race, and these two will be 1-2 again, I'm sure. And things could get a little feisty, see a little bump and run action maybe, but it's far from over and should create a lot of great drama this summer.
And do you think Logano was in the wrong for what he did?
No, I don't think he was. He was fighting to stay on the lead lap, and obviously he felt like he was done wrong by Elliott at Bristol, and felt like he said today, "You cost me a win and I cost you a win." Like I said, I think Hamlin was going to get around Elliott regardless, but in Joey's mind, that's what he felt was right. He didn't wreck Elliott. He just kind of cost him that clean air, and ultimately it cost Elliott the win.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought earlier in that race that he was going to wreck Chase Elliott. When Chase Elliott went to lap him, Logano got a run off turn 2 off the high side and basically pushed Chase Elliott down the back straightaway. It got Chase Elliott really swirly. It was a good save by Chase Elliott. But if you're going to do something to hinder a guy, that's about as clean as you're going to do it, because Logano never made contact with Chase Elliott. He was just in his way. And I think Chase Elliott handled it well after the race. When it was brought up to him, he just said, "I've got to get past lap cars better." I think that's just as good as you're going to handle it. You can't, egg it on. You can't be like, "Oh, well, Joey's a baby for doing that," or, "Joey lost us that race." You can't admit that. You have to just take it, say it was your mistake for not getting by him, and move on. Because if you sit there and try to hold it, over Joey, it's just, you're going to give Joey Logano the satisfaction that he wanted to get out of you. And it's going to prove that you're weak and that you hold on to a grudge. Now, I don't think Chase Elliott's going to do anything. I don't think he's going to respond to that. I still think the racing between them is going to be harder than ever. I think I'm going to bring this back up once we get towards the end of the show, because we got a topic to talk about. And I think it'll come back to this. But Chase Elliott, I think he handled it well. Definitely showing some maturing from Chase Elliott. Definitely something different than what happened in 2017. Now, back in 2017, he had that run-in with Denny Hamlin. I'm going to transition this to Denny Hamlin winning on Sunday at Homestead. He swept the stages and won the race. First time a driver's done that all season. So he maxed out playoff points, 7 playoff points, puts him back on top of the playoff standings. Wes, this was the first race back for Chris Gabehart. And he happens to get his 40th career win, Denny Hamlin did. Ties Mark Martin for 19th all-time, 20th driver to get 40 wins or more. Do you think Chris Gabehart is basically, he makes Denny Hamlin right now?
I think that he definitely plays a good part in it, because I feel like there's a really good relationship between the two. But I feel like a lot of it comes down to just Denny Hamlin being an incredible driver. He's had such a long-term relationship with Joe Gibbs dating back all the way to his rookie year in 2006. And of course, prior when he was competing in, at that time, I guess the Nationwide Series or the Busch Series back in 2004, I believe was one of his rookie years. 2004 and 5, he competed both seasons, and was performing very well then. So I feel like it's a really good combination having both a really good driver and a crew chief that excels really well when it comes down to making great decisions on pit road, and of course being able to get their way around the racetrack. So I feel like it's definitely good for both of them, especially now that Gabehart's back and working with Denny. I think it'll be a good combination, and if they're able to continue to execute these wins as we've seen with Hamlin, I think that we could definitely see him pull off a potential championship this year. He looks to be one of the favorites in a category with some of the guys up there at the top. Like you've got Ryan Blaney competing, you've got Brad Keselowski, Logano, some of those guys looking really sharp too. Chase Elliott, I can name about 6 or 7. So I think that it's a good sign, especially seeing how dominant Hamlin was. I mean, we did have pretty much 3 other contenders. Reddick was up there. Blaney and Elliott were all contenders in that race, pretty much the only 4. But it was just a really good execution of how good of a team one can be, especially when it comes to a track that Hamlin's good at, a track that these two have experience working at in the past, and especially trying to kind of adhere over kind of where they were the last time when they were at Homestead. We saw Hamlin have kind of an unfortunate situation happen in 2019, which cost him the championship there on pit road. And here he comes back showing at a track that he did have a chance to win the championship at. He was able to execute as a whole team. So I feel like that was definitely a good confidence booster, especially having Gabehart back this week. And I think that we can definitely see Hamlin maybe pull off 6 to 8 victories the rest of the year.
Definitely Denny Hamlin looking really strong. Maybe the favorite now to win the championship. Definitely looks – that team just flows better now. I feel like a couple of years ago, if Denny Hamlin gets that 24th place run at Martinsville, that holds over him for the next month at least, and he goes into a big drought. And he just has this big, awful streak where he's just irrelevant, runs in the mid-teens to 20s. And now Denny Hamlin shakes that right off and dominates Homestead. I think Chris Gabehart just has that championship mentality. They want to win every week, and they're going to do everything they can to win. Chris Gabehart is not afraid to be aggressive. He said last year at Homestead, he lives by the fire, and sometimes he gets burned just like he did at Homestead. But that doesn't change Chris Gabehart. He doesn't get more conservative. How many times has Denny Hamlin over the past year and a half taken 2 tires at the end of the race and held off everybody in one? I mean, it's insane what that duo has done. And if you look at the stats in the first 44 races together, they have the same number of wins as Adam Stevens and Kyle Busch and more wins than Rodney Childers and Kevin Harvick. So that duo is looking good, and that's what's going to keep Denny Hamlin a championship threat for the next at least 4 to 5 years. And Denny Hamlin shakes off what could have been retirement in a couple years ago, and now he's going to extend his career throughout the 2020s. Now, we're going to go into the Xfinity Series races, the doubleheader, where Noah Gragson dominated both races but could not pull off a win. Brandon, what do you got to say for Noah Gragson? I mean, he dominates both races and could not win either of them because of late cautions.
I just kind of feel bad for the guy because Noah Gragson gets a bad rep because people think he might be not talented enough to deserve the 9 car. People think he's a dirty driver, especially after what happened at Bristol. But even when he was driving for KBM in the Truck Series, I thought Noah Gragson had the talent. I even thought he might even have the opportunity to take the 48 car whenever Jimmy Johnson retired. I don't think that would be the case now, but if he would have not had the bad luck in the 2 Homestead races, he would already have 4 wins this season. And at the beginning of the season, most people didn't even pick him to even be maybe a threat for the championship, but not win the championship. Most people picked to be Austin Cindric or Harrison Burton or Chase Briscoe. But right now, it looks like Noah Gragson might be the best driver. Well, him and Harrison Burton are the 2 best drivers right now in the Xfinity Series because they're the most consistent. They've always been up front. And it's gonna be a matter of time. But I think Noah Gragson is gonna get lucky. He's gonna win races, and he's gonna reel off a couple in a row because the 9 car's been really strong all season, and especially driving for JR Motorsports. When he gets later into the season, as you saw, even when Tyler Reddick won the championship in what was it, 2018, he was kind of irrelevant that entire season. Then at the end, he pulled it off and won the race. But I think when it comes down to it, it's just a case of bad luck. And he did have so I was listening to Sirius XM this morning. He said they had a long run car, and so it came down to two green white checkers, and the car wasn't there for him. But he'll get around and he'll win races this year, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, and you bring up Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton has been the most consistent driver in the Xfinity Series. He's finished top 10 in every race. Harrison Burton doing a lot better in the Xfinity Series than the Truck Series. Do you think Joe Gibbs Racing is just that much better than Kyle Busch Motorsports?
I think a lot of people said this is that it's the way the car is handled, because in the Truck Series, you're mostly on the throttle the entire time because I won't say it's low horsepower, high downforce. But you don't have the trucks; they're slower than the Cup and Xfinity cars, so there's not as much off throttle time as the Xfinity cars. So probably his driving style, because he didn't even want to race last year in the Truck Series. I don't think he made the playoffs last year in the Truck Series, but he comes to the Xfinity Series this year. He's got wins. He's been consistent, been top 5, top 10 the entire season. So I think it's just a case of that. Plus, I think he's a really talented driver. I think he'll get into now when he gets to the Cup Series. It's gonna be kind of hard because I don't see anybody leaving Joe Gibbs Racing anytime soon, unless Martin Truex just retires a little earlier than we expect. Because Kyle Busch isn't leaving anytime soon. Denny Hamlin's leaving anytime soon. And for that 20 car, it's either going to be Eric Jones or Christopher Bell. So when it comes to that, we'll see. But right now, Harrison Burton is probably the hottest driver in the Xfinity Series.
Definitely. And one driver, you said Noah Gragson and Harrison Burton are the best drivers, but Steve, I think Chase Briscoe's got something to say for that. I think Chase Briscoe, just that first Homestead race was 7 laps down and he came back and finished 7th. I mean, how impressive is that?
Yeah, super impressive. I really thought he was going to pull off a win there. If the cautions fell right, it would have fell right into his lap. Chase Briscoe has just been super impressive this year. I think last year we saw the 00 car in the Xfinity Series with Cole Custer was kind of the lead Stewart Haas car, but now that they just focus on that one Xfinity team with the 98 of Chase Briscoe, they're able to put all their attention into that Xfinity program, and it's really paying off for Chase Briscoe. Here's my cat. And so, yeah, it's just Chase Briscoe's been super impressive to watch, and obviously won the second Homestead race. So it's just been really fun to watch and see him develop as a driver, and it's going to be exciting to see where he can go in the future as far as where he's going to land as a Cup driver.
Yeah, those guys have definitely hit the nail on it. Now he's got Greg Zipadelli on top of the box for the next 3 races due to his crew chief being suspended. 4 races, same penalty that Denny Hamlin's team suffered. And now, Wes, we're going to go to the Truck Series. Kyle Busch basically dominates the race. Anything impressive about that? Or, it's just same old, and, the fans just going to have to deal with it.
I think it kind of comes down to like you said, the second part, just same old Kyle Busch. Luckily for him, he was able to get back in victory lane. It seemed like there might have been a little bit of emotion kind of hanging on after the Chase Elliott race at Homestead. Or, I'm sorry, not at Homestead. That was at, remind me what track that was? Charlotte, of course, because he wasn't able to capitalize on victories the past 2 races there in the Truck Series. But here he was able to come out at a track he knows very well and was able to put on a good show. We saw he had a really good run. Austin Hill, of course, was pretty much like one of the only guys I felt that was able to contend with Kyle Busch. Austin Hill winning last year in the season finale at Homestead, which would have been great had he made the chase. So I feel like Kyle Busch definitely sets the standard very, very high, or at least the bar very high for these Truck Series regulars that are competing, just to show that that's kind of where they are going to need to be if they want to be able to get those victories when he competes, especially just seeing these Cup Series drivers. But I do think that we saw a few drivers, of course, like Ross Chastain have a good run. As I mentioned, Austin Hill, some of these guys were able to at least hang up there with him at certain points in the race, but Kyle Busch was able to get out of that good lead. I think that's kind of the boost that Kyle Busch needed to for this season, seeing that he hasn't scored a victory yet in the Cup Series. Of course, he wasn't able to get a victory at Homestead in the Cup Series this weekend, but he's going to a few tracks after Talladega, especially that, of course, he's going to be a definite threat to win. And I feel like we'll see him break through at some point and be able to score that first victory in the Cup Series this year. And I feel like once he does, he'll be able to get back in that championship kind of mindset and get ready for a potential threat to win a few more races this year.
And Kevin, I want to go back to the Xfinity Series real quick. AJ Allmendinger comes in the race for the Dash for Cash after winning at Atlanta. And AJ Allmendinger comes through clutch at the end and gets a fourth place finish and wins the Dash for Cash, $100,000 for him and the Kaulig Racing team. Do you think AJ Allmendinger may be on a path back into full-time NASCAR racing?
Maybe so. He's had two good back-to-back races. Obviously, he got the win at Atlanta last week, and that was a really good win for him. His first one at an oval. And, it'd be nice to see him back at full-time, especially back in the Cup Series or whatever. Could we see him back there full-time? I think it's definitely possible if he keeps if he keeps doing what he's doing in the Xfinity Series right now. I think you very well could see him go back full-time, whether it's in the Xfinity Series or he does get moved up to the Cup Series again. Obviously, he's going to need more than just two races to figure that out. But I think if he has a pretty good season, I think we very well could see him back in NASCAR full-time.
Yeah, we could definitely see him with Chip Ganassi, maybe a Chevy Alliance, something in that realm. And now, speaking of Chip Ganassi, they used to have a driver that was good at the track that's going to be hosting the All-Star race this year. Bristol, it's going to be under the lights for the All-Star race. First time we have seen an All-Star race not in Charlotte Motor Speedway since 1986 when it was in Atlanta. And Wes, I think this is about as exciting as it gets for NASCAR. Definitely going to bring back, and we're getting 30,000 fans at the racetrack. I mean, this is incredible for NASCAR, don't you say?
I think it's definitely a great change for NASCAR. Nothing against Charlotte. I feel like Charlotte's always been a nice staple, being around so many different NASCAR teams and kind of being the heart of where pretty much NASCAR takes place, pretty much all motorsports. But I think going to Tennessee will be a nice change, especially a track like Bristol. One of the more exciting tracks. I feel like there's never a dull race there. The racing is always phenomenal. Even if there's not really that much passing or there's too much driving on the high lane, it's still always a thrill to watch. And it's definitely a good driver's track. You have to really work it when you go there. So fast, just slipping and sliding pretty much. You have to be able to get good traction off the corners. And you always have to be there ready to go because there's always a lot of competition there at the front. I feel like it can definitely sway, especially when you catch like lap traffic. So I feel like it's going to make for an exciting show when we get there. We're going to have a pretty thrilling open. I feel like a lot of drivers this year are going to be hungry to make it because they have shown good speed, especially like I mentioned, the RCR guys, the JTG guys. Ryan Preece did fairly well there. Ricky Stenhouse, that's one of his best tracks. He might be able to race his way in. So I think it's going to be a really good show.
Yeah, a lot of fans I've already seen on Twitter and Facebook buying their tickets to that race. Hopefully, I'm trying to go. I know you might be going, Wes. It's definitely going to be a nice return to the racetrack. And I saw that Bristol announced in NASCAR that there will be tailgating. Souvenir like tents will be up, so you get those souvenirs that people bring to the track that you can buy. I don't think there's going to be the souvenir trailers. But those, like the, tent city basically will be there selling souvenirs, which will be good for the fans. And just to get to experience Bristol when there's $1 million on the line, these drivers are going to go all out. It's not about finishing second. I mean, you can almost guarantee contact for the win, in the closing stages. We saw it in Bristol early in the season with Chase Elliott and Logano. Just think about that, but them going for $1 million. I can't wait. Format still hasn't been released. We're going to see what happens with it. But now, yeah.
Think about how crazy the Open's going to be with guys just trying to get into the All-Star race.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen just at Charlotte the last couple of years how crazy the Open is. You put, that at Bristol. Oh, man, we've got people, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, Daniel Suarez. I mean, just some battles that we've had at the end of stages in the race in the Open. It's incredible what we're going to see at Bristol. It's going to be a nice show. One thing I will say, I'm not too big on the number being moved back on the car, but I don't think we should let that ruin the racing. It's a one-race test. It's no guarantee this will be put forth, in the future. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I think it's better than it being on the quarter panel, but I think it's just going to be phenomenal racing, and NASCAR is really going to look good with this one. I think ratings are going to be up on it because it's Bristol, and hopefully they're able to put a good show on for the fans at the racetrack. And now we're going to go our Splash and Ghost segment. We got one question this week. It's from Jimmy in Tennessee. Jimmy has asked, who has impressed you so far this season in the Xfinity Series? I'm going to give it to two guys. We're going to start with Kevin. Who in the Xfinity Series has impressed you the most?
Oh, boy. In the Xfinity Series, I'm going to have to go with probably Brandon Jones. He's sitting 6th in the points right now. He's about 90 points out of the points lead of Noah Gragson. So he is a couple races behind the points lead, but he's been doing better, especially better than he has in the past. Could he make a championship run? We'll have to see as the season plays out, but he's been impressing me because especially since we all joke about how quote unquote bad he is, but he's actually been doing pretty good this year. But yeah, that's my surprise for the Xfinity Series.
And Steve, I'm going to give that one to you.
Sure. I know earlier we were talking about Chase Briscoe and how impressive he is, but we even saw good runs out of him last year. I'm actually going with Noah Gragson. He's really done like a 180-degree flip from last year, where he really struggled last year and didn't really have that same chemistry that we saw some other drivers in the 9 car have. So, but this year, obviously getting his first career win at Daytona and then winning at Bristol and really having the most dominant car at both Homestead races. So I look for Noah Gragson to make a deep run into the playoffs, fight for that championship, and I think he's been the most impressive driver of the Xfinity Series so far this season.
Definitely Noah Gragson. If there was an award for most improved driver, I think it'd definitely be him. No wins last year. Could have 4 with this year. If I had to pick, I'd pick Riley Herbst, but we're not going to go into it. Riley Herbst is doing really good this year in that 18 Monster Energy Supra, but we'll save that one for another podcast. And now we're going to go to Talladega. And, we are about as wild with the picks. Every week seems like a wild card for our picks because none of us can seem to pick a winner. All our picks just falling off the face of the earth last week. And for me, every week. Steve and Wes still hold strong with 1 win apiece. The rest of us have 0. And Steve, Kevin Harvick did not work out for you. He has finished top 5 in every Homestead race since his joining at Storehouse Racing in 2014, and then he finishes 26th.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I think Kevin Harvick found out that I picked him and just completely fell off the face of the earth. I mean, just wasn't a factor the entire race. So with Talladega, thankfully everything's kind of an equalizer, and you never know what's going to happen. So I'm making this pick purely off of just throwing a name out there because you never know what's going to happen. I'm going to go with Austin Dillon. He's going to win Sunday at Talladega.
Earnhardt.
It's been 20 years since Dale Earnhardt got his final win at Talladega. And 20 years after Dale Earnhardt won the Daytona 500, Austin Dillon won the Daytona 500. So you may be onto something there, Steve.
Hey, just kind of keep it on the DL for right now.
I'm gonna have to tweet Austin Dillon saying you picked him. Kevin, Eric Jones did not work out for you. He was
No,
actually
he
running
didn't.
well towards the end. He was in sixth and, was clicking off some quick laps and brushes the wall, has a flat tire, typical Eric Jones luck, and finishes back in 21st. That gives you the second pick today. Who do you got?
Oh man, honestly, I don't really know. This is a plate track, and I really don't know. I'm gonna stick. I know Junior isn't in the 88 car, but I'm sticking with the just the presence of that 88 car. I'm gonna go with Bowman. I don't know why, but I just feel like he has a chance. He finished second last year at Dega behind Chase Elliott. So yeah, that's my pick. I'm gonna go with Bowman and go back to the 88 Chevy.
Always a good pick. In the fall race, he was leading before getting involved in a wreck that caused the big one with him and Joey Logano. And now for my pick. I had Martin Truex Jr. last week. Thought he could go back-to-back. Was feeling the New Jersey pride, and it just didn't work out. This week, let's flash back to the fall at Talladega. Who was leading coming into the Tri-Oval? It was Ryan Newman. He did not win. Lost to Ryan Blaney. Move forward to the Daytona 500. Who was leading coming into the Tri-Oval? Ryan Newman. Who won the race? Denny Hamlin. This time, Ryan Newman is going to lead coming into the Tri-Oval. But this time, he's not letting anybody pass him. He's not letting anybody wreck him. He's going to win. It's going to be storybook stuff. Ryan Newman's going to come back. He's going to lock himself into the playoffs, and he's going to win at Talladega. And he's going to come out of the car. He's going to say the track sucks, the racing sucks. He still hates it, but he's going to win. And he's going to be in the playoffs. Ryan Newman is going to win at Talladega. And now, Wes, your pick, Tyler Reddick, had a great run, finished fourth, and that gets you our fourth pick today.
This is an interesting one. It's funny because I actually lean towards Austin Dillon as well, but Steve kind of took my pick. I feel like RCR has a really good chance to have a strong showing at Talladega. Track, they've always been great at restrictor plates, and of course Dale Earnhardt, an absolute king at Talladega. So, just thinking about my other picks, there's only one other guy I could really think of that I was interested at picking because it is Talladega. I'm picking a guy that's actually won here twice, but it's a guy that we don't talk a lot about. He's, I feel like, a sleeper pick, but we've seen the team perform really well here. You all probably still don't know who I'm talking about, but I'm actually going to go with Clint Bowyer. I'm going Clint Bowyer, one of the unluckiest drivers, I feel like.
Oh, my God.
But we haven't seen Bowyer really have a lot of good luck this year, even though he's been up front competing a lot of the time up there in the top 10, even the top 5. And also looking really good at Darlington too. I feel like that's kind of what we forget about with Bowyer, but I think Bowyer is going to be able to get back in victory lane. I feel like if Stewart-Haas, they've been able to implement really good strategies there before. Almirola and Harvick both really run well. If Cole Custer is able to figure it out, I feel like that we could see them up front, and I think that Bowyer's got a good shot to kind of end this bad luck streak and also a pretty long win streak.
Oh boy, if Clint Bowyer wins this race, he may invite all 5,000 of those fans, into the infield for a party.
It's got to happen. You can't not have a party without Clint Bowyer.
Oh man, Clint Bowyer definitely the most, he has the biggest personality in the series right now, and he's gonna have Barstool Sports on the car this week, so even more to party if he wins. For a second, you said 2 wins, and the first one that popped in my head was Jimmy Johnson. Thankfully, you didn't pick Jimmy Johnson because we don't need to be seeing Jimmy Johnson break a winless streak of over 100 races at Talladega of all tracks, and then all the Jimmy Johnson fans saying he's back.
Yeah, I feel like out of anywhere, we're going to need to see Jimmy Johnson. I mean, he's had a good season, but I feel like it'll be better for his legacy if he's able to dominate and win, kind of like what we saw at Martinsville or like we could have saw at Charlotte. I feel like he's going to have to lead some laps up front at a good track like that, especially like a 1.5 miles, or of course a short track, maybe at Texas or maybe even in the All-Star race. We'll have to see what Johnson can do. But no, he was not my pick. going for Boyer. It would be cool to see one of the funniest guys in NASCAR be able to get back in victory lane, especially like you said, the sponsor. I feel like that's going to be a pretty special and important weekend for him.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon, by virtue of your pick of Ryan Blaney, he got third, highest finisher out of our picks. You get to pick last. Brandon, who you got?
Matt. Well, I've been really thinking about it like the last couple of minutes. I was thinking, man, Talladega is really a crapshoot, but you guys have gone kind of off the wall or unpredictability. I'm going to stay on the course. I'm going to pick Brad Keselowski to win Talladega. He's always been faster, restricted plates. He's won everything on the plate track except the Daytona 500. And the Penske cars are always faster all the time. So I think Brad Keselowski is going to win at Talladega.
Yeah, I was actually interested that, none of us picked, your guys you always think about at the super speedways, the Denny Hamlins, the Joey Logano's. No one really picked them. And Brad Keselowski has 5 wins at the racetrack, I believe. He's looking for 6, or he might have 6. Have to double check that. His last win did come in 2017, but since then, Brad Keselowski's gotten caught up in almost every big one imaginable at the super speedways. But Keselowski, and we've heard him get frustrated. I mean, he's shown the frustration, especially in the shootout this year, the clash. He got out of that car after being in a wreck and slammed. He slammed right onto that ambulance. He was not happy, and then he gets wrecked in the 500 by his own teammate not lifting and pushing Eric Almirola into the back of Keselowski. And Keselowski has stated before, he's not lifting. Keselowski's not lifting. So lifters are losers for Brad Keselowski because if you lift, Keselowski's not, and you're getting wrecked. Keselowski, granted, might get wrecked too, but Brad Keselowski, a solid pick, the winningest active driver at the racetrack. And we could see Brad Keselowski join Denny Hamlin with 3 wins on the season.
Yes, I actually do. A lot of people thought I was going to pick Matt Kenseth to win this race, but
It sounded like you said Matt. It sounded like you said Matt. And I was like, what the?
he has been struggling a bit this year. I do think he is a good plate racer, especially after around 2011. He was like dominating Talladega races, but didn't get the win except for the one in the fall race. But the one prediction I do have for Talladega is I think Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace will find some way to hook up to get to the front. We all know they're best friends, always been good friends. They even had they hooked up a little bit at the beginning of last year at Talladega until Bubba Wallace kind of was a little over aggressive and wrecked himself. But Bubba Wallace has been doing really good this year. Ryan Blaney's been doing good this year. They both need a win. I think those two, especially with Penske being 3 cars and Ryan Blaney probably the odd man out. I think Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace will help each other, each other front, and maybe pull off a win. But at the end, I think it will be Brad Keselowski.
All right, and we've seen flips at Talladega the last few times we've gone there. Just before we end the show, quick, I'm going to go down the line. Just yes or no, will we see a car flip this Sunday? Steve?
Yes.
Wes? Wes, you are muted.
That was my mistake. I clicked it. It didn't unmute. No, I don't think we're going to see Rick. Or
We're not, I would say that's a bold prediction. No wrecks.
Yeah, we're gonna
Talladega.
Hey, it happened once before. No, but I don't think we're going to see a flip.
Kevin?
Hell yeah.
And Brandon?
Yes, and the person I think is going to flip, only because he's had terrible luck this year, it's going to be William Byron. He's probably
Eric Jones. No, definitely Eric Jones. Definitely Eric Jones.
I mean, think about it. William Byron's been up front like all the season. I think he almost has like what 1 or 2 top 10s. So I think he's gonna run up front in Talladega. But if it's gonna be a flip, it's probably gonna be William Byron.
I'm gonna feel bad if it's Ryan Newman that flips.
Oh no!
Well, I picked Newman, so it could happen.
Honestly, if Ryan Newman flips in Talladega, he might quit after that race because he's flipped like 5 or 6 times already in his career. I think he's gonna be done with it. Plus, think of the media attention that's gonna happen if Ryan Blaney flips again this year. That's just going to be bad. So
Ryan Blaney has not flipped this year.
I'm afraid that Ryan Newman. I'm sorry.
Ryan
Newman.
Well, as long as Corey LaJoie doesn't run into him. But then again, according to Corey LaJoie, if he was in the 11 car, he'd be lapping the field every week. So he wouldn't have to worry about running into Ryan Newman when he hit the wall there at the last lap of the 500. But I think that's all we've got for today. enjoy the race at Talladega because it's going to be a wild one. No practice, so nobody knows what the draft's going to be like. I think there'll be a lot of single file racing toward the beginning, but definitely getting crazy. We'll see a big one. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week after Talladega. Enjoy.
Yeah.